Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. It's called Very Visual Stories. Books are stories we tell visually in words and pictures, designed as works of elegant form and of substance that stimulates and disrupts. Books are cultural artifacts, and making them rises and falls with our creativity and resourcefulness. Today, we welcome three distinguished speakers. So I will be introducing them to you one by one at the beginning. And first, we have Corazon S. Alvina, studies Philippine material culture, curates, and writes. She was director of the National Museum of the Philippines and concurrently member of the Board of Commissioners of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and was director, then president of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila. Alvina is a published writer and photographer. She has conceptualized, edited, and written in 3 books for the Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubo, A Delicate Balance, Batanes Food, Ecology, and Community, published in 2016. A Warrior's Armament and Ornament, published in 2020, and Food and Ethnographic Paraphernalia, currently in press production. Our second speaker is Angelo R. Lacuesta, a prize-winning novelist, short story writer, screenwriter, and filmmaker. His most recent publication is the novel Iro, published by Mil Flores Publishing in 2025, with a forthcoming collection of new short fiction entitled Affidavit. Iro was selected as one of 10 novels to be presented for possible film adaptation at the Books at Berlinale section of the 2025 Berlinale Film Festival. He is co-managing director of Good Intentions Books, an independent publishing house based in Manila. He is editor-at-large of Esquire Philippines and is the current president of the Philippine Center of Pen International. Ian Santamaria is the author and illustrator of Salamanca. It's a Gintong Aklad Award-winning sequel, Salamanca 2 and Makina, all published by Summit Books. He's also the artist and co-creator of Skyworld, once a best-selling graphic novel in the Philippines, as well as the critically acclaimed 66, also known internationally as Mang Tino, created in collaboration with writer Russell Molina. With over 2 decades of recognition as an award-winning creative in the Philippine advertising industry, Ian now fulfills a lifelong dream as a senior concept artist at Lego. So let us please welcome our distinguished speakers.
No, I'm fine. Good morning, everybody. I would like to have the first slide, please. Okay. If there's a little bit of a sad note, the photographer with whom I worked for this project just passed away the other day. So he didn't see this book in print. And our major writer, Dr. Victor Paz, passed away last year. So there are 2 major players or makers of this book who never saw this in its actuality. Okay. Very visual stories. What I will tell you about are the stories behind the book. For years, I worked as production manager, first of Filipino Heritage, that 10-volume series on Philippine culture, and then for 11 years for GCF Books, the publisher of, here prize-winning in Frankfurt in 1978, The Culinary Culture of the Philippines, and other political, cultural, historical books that have been researched and illustrated. My boss Hilda Fernando bristled at the title that our books were coffee table books. They were not coffee table books. They were researched, illustrated, and presented in the most beautiful way. So we never refer to them as coffee table books. Okay, how did we make the books? It was very simple because Hilda was a very uncomplicated person. She never had contracts. She forged all of these among us working team with a handshake. That was all it took, a handshake. And she would call the people that she wanted to make a certain book to lunch and just talk to us about it and discuss and feed us very well. So very many people would they raise their hands, can we participate in your book? Because making a book for GCF books was in the beginning very pleasant. I mean, it was a lot of kwentuhan or storytelling as you brainstorm, etc. But towards the end, it would get a little tricky and a little prickly because there was always an altercation among Hilda, the publisher, the book designer, and it would be either Nick Ricio, Frey Cabading, Edwina Arroyo. There was always an altercation. I was in the middle because I would have to deal with whatever concerns they had. And there was a third person who was involved, and that was the production manager of the press that we would work in. I remember Hilda would bring me to the press and said, don't open your mouth, because every time you open your mouth in front of the production manager of the press, the price increases. Because you keep asking for more paper, better ink, better working hours. You want to finish in 3 days, a book that would take about 3 months. So she said, just don't open your mouth. But I couldn't keep it closed, of course. So with the designer, it was always because Hilda had very definite ideas also visually, because she was an artist. And so did the designers. And so it would end when the book was just about 3 weeks from being released. They were no longer talking to one another. And the conversation in the press would go like this. Please tell your boss that we cannot do this thing. Okay, we cannot. Please tell your designer, I want it in blue. Okay, he wants it in blue. But we were all seated in one table. Okay? So for me, those stories entered into the visualization and the making of the books, because each of the altercation resulted in something that was good. If it was an idea that had to be, forged, it was an idea that had to be erased. I remember when we were making one book in particular. It's called The History of the Bourgeois, the history of the bourgeoisie, and it was put out at the end of martial law, although we began it in the beginning of the unrest to end martial law. So that in the end, we had to change the last few chapters, the last few pages. May I have the next page, please? Just to things that we fight about. These are the fly leaf of the book we just saw. And so the fight between Mr. Kabadi and myself was, are those scientifically correct? Is there really a fish like that? And what color will you put that in? And so Mr. Kabadi is a very, how do you say that? Stubborn person. So nothing I could say would change his mind. I think it is a miracle, actually, that these books came out because all of us were stubborn. All of us were hard-headed. Anyway, going back to Burgess. So I was in charge of choosing the editorial placement of the photographs. And of course, I would put them. And then I had a little envelope called rejects. Okay, these things we don't want to use. Put them in the rejects and leave them in the office. Next morning, they'd be back in the layout, in the pages. Mrs. Fernando, Hilda, in the evening, put them all back again. And I said, it was so difficult to isolate these photographs that we want to use, etc. So the entire day, I would put them back again. and the next day to be the same. So I brought home the envelope of the rejects so that she could no longer. Yeah, that was the only way that I could control her. Anyway, and then the press is another thing. As you know, the presses in the past were not as they are now. The colors had to be calibrated. You dealt with four uh, four barrels instead of one now. It was all. It is now all digitized. Uh, I went from uh, mixing, and depending on which press you're working with, you put it on the paper and you go out and look at it under the sun. I mean, it was that rudimentary. But now you have printing presses with all of these which are digitized. Everything is, the colors are calibrated and you don't have to watch them. That's why books can now be printed in three weeks, where it took about 3 or 4 months. Then the issues of the very visual stories would be paper. Okay, during martial law, there was a regulation about paper. You couldn't import paper. You had to buy paper from Pickup. Okay, so book paper. And my thing was, give me a caliper. And the paper industry then was not very expert. So uh, a 60-grammer paper would sometimes be 60 grams, sometimes be 90, and sometimes be 40, and just you're looking at one ream. So that was one of the things. And then if you want good ink, you have to import good ink. Because the local ink, how do you say that? Nababakbak, those lots of, they would peel off from the pages. And then sometimes the parts of the machine would be out of order, and you can't buy rubber blankets. And then also the plates, where the book images are transferred from negative into metal plates, metal plates, not zinc plates, because the zinc was very expensive. So you had that. After you use that, you had to give it back to the plater, because they would grind it to make it usable again, to reuse. But sometimes, if they are in a hurry, if not very mindful, they're not able to erase everything. And you see ghost images of the previous plate in your present plate. I was called then Reina ng Reject, the Queen of Rejects. Because when the pages would start to run, and I would say, this cannot be, and I would write my name across the plate, very, very big, reject, and I would sign it. And so, Reina and reject, because nothing that I thought was not worthy of putting between covers and putting out into circulation should leave a printing press. What else were the issues? And of course, now our press people have been trained. In the past, it was just what do you call it? Apprenticeship with your boss. There were only two printing schools. I think Don Bosco was one, and it's okay. And UST had a little something. University of Santo Tomas also had a little bit of a course, but a really hot shot thing where they taught printing, like Mercantile in New York. There was no such thing here in the Philippines. So everybody learned by ear, oído, or the Filipinos are very good with crafts. They learned it by themselves and perfected it. And they were the most dedicated people, the pressmen. Because most of the presses were not air conditioned, so they labored in very hot situations. And the whole time you were there, and the machines were they would warm up, and no kids, no, because there were twice I have witnessed accidents where the pressman cleaning the tube had accidents, and their fingers had to be amputated. Yeah. And sometimes because you can't just pull out the hand because it will be worse. So they called the technician of the press, Solna or Heidelberg. They had to look for the technician, and they would take the machine apart piece by piece. And sometimes it took the whole day to dismantle an entire press, an entire machine. And so, but I've also seen the camaraderie in while the man is hanging there by literally his fingers inside, the other pressmen would go beneath him to carry him on on their shoulders. Turno turno, they each took their turns to support the guy, so that it was just a marvelous camaraderie among the pressmen. In the making of books, actually, they say I err towards production because I spent most of my time in the printing press because I was watching the runs. Now we don't do that anymore because the machinery, the technique, they've all perfected this. But Hilda used to say, you invented your job. There was no such thing among publishers. The position of production manager didn't exist. It existed in the printing press, not in the publishing entity. So, in effect, I invented my job, and it has given me a lot of stories to tell, both in the content and behind the making of the book. I enjoy the making after the writing. Also, you know that I write, and I also harass the photographer and the designer. That was my chief duty, was to harass them so that they would submit to us. And but they said my best work was actually within smelling distance of printer's ink. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing insights into the publication industry. And may I now welcome? Can we now welcome Angelo Lacuesta or Sarge? So thank you.
I just want to speak briefly. I want to talk about beginnings because back in 2018, I had a big health scare. Actually, it's not a health scare, a health moment. No, something really big. I'll just say it out loud. I had a heart attack in 2018. My wife is frowning. No, so that really pushes you to do something. No, and I still had a lot of stories in me. At that time, I was only a short story writer. So, can I have the first slide, please? So I decided, I have 21 stories left to write. I decided to lock myself in the room and write them out as comics. And because I'm a comic lover, and I found myself thinking, I'm going to write 21 stories. I might have another heart attack. So to save myself, I wrote 21 comic stories, the scripts, and I asked 21 of the most gifted comic illustrators among us to illustrate those stories. It became Stay. But before that could happen, the economics of comic book making, as everybody knows, Ian, you know this, and a lot of our great luminaries in comic book making are in the audience. It's very difficult to get 21 comic illustrators to come together write the comics. I mean, the royalties alone will blow your mind, about how small they might be. So I had to start a publishing house of my own, not to do it. So that's how my wife and I started Good Intentions Publishing. But this was our first book, Stay. It's 21 comic stories. The cover is actually one of the creators of Trece, si Kajo. I'm just going to go through the stories a little bit just to show you how these stories became beginnings of other stories. I'm really a literary writer. I mean, I write words, which is really unfortunate, because it's so hard. But I grew up loving comics, and so this book is very close to me. Next slide, please. So, one of the stories here, Bedweather, is really about the post-apocalyptic scenario where an earthquake finally levels the entire country, and there's a woman who's almost dying there, who is discovered by another being, and the being turns out to be, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The being turns out to be this sort of robot, artificial intelligence whose job it is to find human beings trapped in the rubble and sort of talk to them like human beings until they die. This is the beginning for me of a journey into the idea of artificial intelligence, etc., etc. But interestingly enough, a little point about this book, Stay. It's been in the stands. It's been in the national stands since 2019 or 2020, and it has not sold a single thing. No, it's there. It's very nice. Please look at it, but please don't buy it because I want it to stay. No, really. But I just want to say that this story actually won a literary award. It won the University of Florida Chapbook Award. No, I have another story. Next slide, please. Bedweather. No, that was Bedweather. This is another story where it's called the Fumetti. No, Fumetti. Fumetti are stories that are based on photographs, that are told in photographs. Their comics are told in photographs. Next slide, please. So it's about a person watching a movie and being so struck by the movie star, and realizing that they Google the movie star when they watch the movie, Jean Seberg in this case, and realize that she killed herself, and she led a really tragic life. And they leave the theater, and the memory of Jean Seberg is still in their minds, and they realize that cinema is forever. This comic book was shot by a friend of mine, Dominic Beckert, whom I would collaborate with later on a movie called An Errand. Actually, I asked him how much he wanted as a talent fee, and he said, "Why don't you write a script for me?" So I ended up writing a script for him, and it became An Errand, which premiered this year, early this year at the Rotterdam Film Festival. So it really led to greater things. So I felt lucky, but also I felt that there might be something. We might be a really visual people. There might be something. The reason, one of the proofs of that is, if you go around our stands and if you go around the pavilion, you'll see how important comics are to us, and how important visual stories are to us. Cora, you talked about the visual aspect of bookmaking, and indeed, the book is a visual experience before it is anything else. No, so in my case, performing this fumetti for the very first time with no experience or no knowledge about how a comic book is put together really made me think almost cinematically. No? Next slide, please. Now, I worked with Shira Luna, who is a fashion photographer, and I asked her if she could do a story for me. It's a rather erotic story about a dead wife who visits her very much alive husband, while she's shacking up already with the next wife. And she shows up there at the dinner table. It's called Triple Fantasy. This also won, by the way. This was also tied for the same award at the University of Florida. But it also made me realize that Shira Luna is a very renowned fashion photographer, and she immediately understood the story and immediately took to it. We had never done anything like this, but we realized, we can do it. And I realized that when we were doing it, the people I was working with, the artists and the photographers, their instinct for telling the story was so great that they took a writer like me who didn't know how to write a comic script. I had no idea how to write it. But I have to thank the producers, book producers like you were, who told me how to write the script. Left, right, you write it panel by panel. And I gave them basically everything. And they understood their craft, the craft of photography, the craft of putting everything together. And they just kept shooting, and we put it together into a readable comic that made some sense. And next slide, please. I particularly am attached to this story because it's quite erotic and quite sexual and quite dark also, which is very Filipino. So after finishing the 21 stories, which never got sold anywhere, please. So no. I realized that we indeed are a very visual people. And this book, while it did nothing to certain audiences, it did a lot of work on me as a writer. Now, as a filmmaker, having written and produced 2 films, and we're writing our 3rd now, I realized that cinema now is so connected to comic book writing, to literary writing, so that there is a thread. There is a very visual thread in our history, in our culture, that connects all our narratives, connects all our spirit, no, our sexuality, our dismal, bleak view of the future, our view of the present, our very tentative, no, and I should say tenuous present, where an earthquake can kill us anytime. At this moment, no, there's a string of earthquakes happening in the country, from north to south. No, in fact, classes have been called off from time to time because of earthquakes. No, and comic book writing for me and movie watching for me became so connected with Filipino ingestion of culture, because it's quick, it's fast, it's very visual. You get it, and yet it lingers. No, so that's where I am now, and it's part of the journey of every writer, I guess. No, my journey as a writer to go visually and to understand how visuality, connects so much to our narrative. No, so I think Stay has been a lucky charm. May it not sell any rights, but may it continue to inspire myself as I continue writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarge, for sharing a bit of your personal journey and how it found its way into your
Thanks.
comics. And let us now welcome Ian Santamaria.
Hello, hi. Salamanca means magic, and for me, very visual stories are just like that. They're magic. First slide, please. All these lines, these colors, these textures. These images capture your attention and then trigger your imagination. I'm a concept artist. My job is to tell stories without words. As a Filipino visual artist, my dream is to share our stories and our culture with the universe. And I fantasize about this a lot. I fantasize about magic, about mythology, and I daydream like 75% of the day. I'm daydreaming right now, actually. I daydream of giant capres smoking cigars behind huge balete trees. I daydream of mysterious white glowing ladies walking in enchanted forests. I daydream of tikbalang warriors brandishing these giant mythical swords. And these are the things that occupy my mind more often than not. Next slide, please. So I romanticize our traditions. Our cultural traditions are very, very deeply visual. They're painted on our skin. They're woven into our fabrics. They're carved into panels of wood. And what tradition does, it really, like Serge said, it connects us. It helps us connect. It helps us remember, and it helps us pass on our culture to the next generation. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not used to speaking in events like this, so I need your help. So, anyone from the crowd, what do you see? What story does this picture tells you? Anyone? Anyone? Well, where? Bambi?
Got cut off by the giant crab, but in the end, the warrior proves victorious because you can see that the spear is through the crab and it's dead.
Yeah, so
Did
that's
I get it right?
yeah. I mean, that's what pictures do, right? They also more than transcending language barriers. Thank you, and for that you get the free book. Yeah. So later on, I'm going to ask questions. So this is my way of bribing the crowd. You can also see this as my wife having a discussion with me. But that's what visual stories do. No? They transcend language barriers. They give nuances and details, and they always activate our critical thinking in just one picture, without words. Next slide, please. So I celebrate the colors of our culture. Our culture, our cultures and our stories are always as diverse as the patterns that you see on our ancestral garbs. The details are as personal and detailed as a fingerprint. And our festivals are like rainbows. You know, we sorry, they speak strongly of identity, and these colors say we are here and we are proud of who we are and where we come from. Next slide, please. Again, from the crowd, how does this picture make anyone feel? What's that feeling that you get from looking at the picture? Anyone, please. You're gonna get something. You got okay, please.
Oh, sorry. I got
Oh,
it first.
Okay, okay. I'll get back to you.
I'll give it back to you. I'll bring it to you. Love across boundaries.
Sorry, come again.
Love across boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I was thinking because the green, this connection to each other and to nature,
Yes, and yes. And the two of you get books.
that makes me feel good. Yeah.
Thank you. Seraph, my assistant here. Seraph, thank you. So as an artist, the best thing that we could hope for is not just to entertain or offer some sort of escapism through fantasy, but I hope to, after reading our books, that you take home a feeling. You take this feeling home with you, and that it resonates, and that for those of you who are not Filipino, that you may discover that our culture may reflect yours, and that good stories will always make you think about how you want to live. And very visual stories are magical just like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, Sarge, and Ma'am Corazon. Okay, I would just now like to open the floor. If you have any questions to our speakers or comments, please feel free to ask us. If none, I will start. So I would just like to ask, they say we dream in images, right? So how much, so you talked about fantasizing during the day, right? Sarge talks about having no experience in making comics, but perhaps creating it in your imagination. And Ma'am Cora also talked about how the imagination finds its way into the publishing process. So my question really is what's a part of your process involves imagination, and how much of that gets into print? How do you relay that, for example, to the collaborators, to the artists?
I think in my case, because I'm always working in collaboration when it comes to comics or film, by choice. No, I don't have any aspirations of being a film director. I love being a writer and creative producer, because there's always something that happens when I'm connecting with another mind, and the ideation that happens becomes an argument. No, an argument. There's a lot of tension in that creation. No, when I was doing working with, for example, my director Dominic, who had offered to me the chance of doing a film, and we had in fact brought it to Cinemalaya, which is our premier independent film festival, no, in the Philippines. We had gone through the whole gamut of fighting, loving each other, hating each other in the morning, and not talking to each other, but realizing also that when it came to cinema, to the actual shooting it would be a completely different animal. I'll give you an example of how visuality is so inherent to us. No, I had asked him, no, I was born in the advertising industry as well, no, as you know, no. I was a creative director in the advertising industry. I'm so used to having storyboards. No, when you have commercials, do a storyboard, 15 seconds. No, do a storyboard of 35 frames for a 15-second commercial. So I asked him, no, aren't we going to do a storyboard for a movie, right? Which we see a lot in Hollywood films. No? So do a storyboard. And he just completely ignored me. No? So I was sitting there, wondering what was going to happen, right? And he was just shooting the film. And I realized that for Filipinos, no, he's the storyboarding happens in the mind, and there's a lot of trust involved in it, and you have to trust your own sort of narrative sense when you come to ideation, and that's something that is so innate to Filipinos that I feel hopeful. It makes me feel hopeful, and this is an important point for me. I feel hopeful about the age of AI, about the Filipino in the age of AI, where generation has been your video generation, image generation, text generation can completely be handled by AI. But ideation, the creation of new ideas, the creation of something that has never been thought of before, is something that is human, entirely human, and that's something Pinoys like to do. We like to invent things on the fly. We like to wing it. Obviously, I winged this presentation. And it comes out almost better. It's fresher, it's angrier, it's louder, as you said, and it's closer to the bone and the heart. And that's what happened when we create. You make a lot of mistakes, but the purity, I think, outweighs the roughness.
I was just curious, right? Yes, yes.
Yeah, just like Sarge said, it's exactly that. But it is also a journey into absurdity. So as a concept artist at Lego, I am surrounded by master builders. And sometimes the brief would be, Ian, we need 200 drawings by Friday, and they're briefing me on a Tuesday. So we need 200 images or drawings of a tree that should look like it's a tree from outer space and not a tree from, fantasy or magical elves and the like. So what just like what Sarge said, it's you try to come up with something that hasn't been done before, and that's almost impossible. And most of the time, our exercises is with computers off. The exercise is to not look at Pinterest and not look at Google, but just ideate and work off of your visual vocabulary. So like most writers, you brush up on your words, how you use them, the vocabulary. And that in turn, as an artist, we try to do the same, but with lines, with colors, and with texture. And it is a lot, again, with drawings, it's not right or wrong, but it's, from 200 drawings, our creative director will choose one, that one tree, where he will go, okay, I think this is something I haven't seen before. And that is because of experimentation and just doing something out of instinct and or winging it.
I think I was very fortunate during my work in bookmaking and production that I said the altercation and conversation and meals with Hilda Fernando brought together some of the most imaginative minds that have ever trod Philippine soil. Manny Ariola, Fe Ariola, Onib Olmedo, the late Odette Alcantara, all four almost, and so it was their imagination, the way they threw ideas. They were irreverent, and what they say, out of the box, really. And of course, sometimes it would shock the designer because he would say, "Can that be done? Can we say these things?" And because like we did a book on the body. It was called the body book, and so the question there was, we named each part, except when we went to the delicate parts, are we gonna name them by names? Okay, the Catholic Church will run after us, the censors will run after us, yes, and or should we leave it to the imagination? Everybody knows what they look like anyway, but we consulted just two people, the late Doreen Fernandez and national artist Virgilio Almario, who said, name them, and we did. So there is the imagination, but there's also a lot of input from all. Some, maybe about 80% you throw out, because the 20 you then distill so that you can visualize your book. so that they can be put. The photographer, of course, gets a brief, and the artist will come back and forth to show the work to us. Thus, Daddy Dalena, Onib Olmedo, Carlos Valino, they would give us their work. And the works are also fruits of their imagination, but sometimes, how do you say that, interfered with by our imagination. So as I said, it is a miracle that all GCF books came out.
Thank you very much. I was just curious because of the ideas, ideation, imagination, and collaboration. Underlying all that, there's a process. And I think that's what comes out with what you just shared. So I think there's someone raising his or her hand.
Yeah, I just had a question, and I don't think maybe it is relevant, but when you showed the picture of the water creature and the human kissing, I was thinking that growing up, I heard a lot of stories about water, fairies, duendes, and all of those things. And then when I moved to Europe, my peers didn't have the same stories, but when you go back in time, looking at their mythology, a lot of the things are the same. So I was thinking, how come that some cultures are so close to their mythology and history, and then some are more, separated from it?
So, just to reiterate, your question is why do some people are more connected to cultures and when some are not?
Well, not maybe culture, but
To the mythology?
yeah, because when I was growing up, there's a lot of mythologies and very visual representations of monsters or fairies. And then when I moved to Europe, I would talk to my friends about this, and they were like, "What are you talking about?" But then when we studied history and and also just a literature of the more Western world, they have the same creatures, but then it's not so close to their storytelling when they were growing up as maybe mine was. I don't know if mine is more visual or scary than others.
Well, I would say that would be about the individual's interest and the availability of the data. Because if you're really interested in something, like me, I became very interested in not just Filipino mythology, but everything, Norse, Greek, everything that has gods and warriors in it. That I'm into that shit. I'm sorry, but I love that. So I guess if you are around people who are also into that same thing, I mean, you find ways, right, to look for it. You go out and seek it. If you're really, really are interested in these kinds of things.
I like to think that we grew up, we Filipinos, no? We grow up in our imagination, I like to fantasize. I like to master build. I master build almost every day. As I fantasize. But seriously, Filipinos grow up so close to their imagination. I grew up believing that if I knelt on the floor and I walked on my knees, that the ghosts of my ancestors would show up. And I would have to make the sign of the cross 3 times so that they would not show up. I grew up believing that if I looked out the window at night, I would see the creatures called agta outside the window, these dark creatures outside. I grew up believing that if I looked up a tree, there would be a creature smoking a cigar, asking of me whatever he wanted, and I would have to give it up. I grew up believing that if I lost something, a little toy or a ball, that the dwarves had taken it. And you know what? I grew up talking to the dwarves, asking for my ball back, and they would give it to me. So, for a nation that lives in this kind of imagination brought down to us by our parents and our grandparents, clinging to that imagination, surrounded by corruption, surrounded by greed, surrounded by natural calamities, it is what we have. No, if you look at our pavilion, what surrounds you are not structures. What surrounds you is imagination. No, the reason why we have music in between our panels, and we talk. We finish our slides late, and we're interesting to talk to, and we have the best jokes in the world, and we have the dirtiest minds. It's because of our imagination. this is what we offer to the world. Filipino is the most well-traveled soul. No? Literally, there are how many? 10 million Filipinos abroad. We're also the most well-traveled minds and imaginations. I should say that. No, I heard a story earlier about it's well known, no, that there are many Filipinos who work in households all over the world. No, that many young children brought up in those households, no, they're Western children, no, they know now about the tiyanak, about the duende, about the capre. They're scared now of seeing their own shadow, no, thanks to the they've been reared in a household with a Filipino, and we love it. No, it's our way of infusing the world with imagination and making them understand that imagination has a power to relieve us, from disappointments, from hate, from disunity, which we're undergoing right now, and from anger, from our own anger at ourselves. No, so it's what saves us, and at the same time, it's what defines us. No.
And I think, as most of you know, the Filipinos, before the arrival of Islam and Christianity, we were pre-Hispanically, we were animists. The thing is, our religion that came in became syncretic. We didn't give up any of most of our pre-Hispanic things are still with us. And that is why there's mythology, and that is why there are beliefs, and the imagination feeds that, constantly. You hark back to what the practices are. But at the same time, the Christianity exists. When Christianity arrived, the pantheon of Philippine deities were not removed. They were just put over. Even Bathala, God the Father, and then all our deities, became angels and saints. So it was very easy for us to put them, together. But we did not lose them, not the character of these beings, and they travel with us, with our imagination.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions? If not, I would like to ask about color. Just the last question, because I noticed your Ian, your images. It's very colorful, right? So, and I think there's politics in colors also, right? So I'm just curious, the role of color in your creations, whether it's film, it's in a book, or in comics, and in So what's the role of color and in your work?
The combinations of color, in my view, it's colors about harmony. Everything you see is about harmony, and how one color will always accentuate or push the other, and and how color would also push an emotion through. Like, for example, you use a lot of reds and blacks for anger or mystery. A lot of blues or purples for suspense. So in that way, we see how color can actually help us react when we look at something. And that's what I think.
Well, in my present job, apart from the bookmaking, I now make environments, or we are planning environments for material culture. And so we try to excavate the colors with meaning. For instance, if there is Mindanao, I'm going to put the red that is the color of dried blood, because it means something to that culture. I look at the context of a particular color to the ethno-linguistic group and to the material culture that we are going to present, just for cohesion, of the presentation. But for those really interested in color, have you read the book of Hal Conklin? Because there he describes that in certain ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines, it's not red, it's not blue, it is actually lighter color, darker color. It's a different kind of classification of colors. Among Hanuno, he talks about Hanuno. And it's not a color, it is the intensity and the register of a particular color that they see around them. And of course, most of that will be brown. This is the blue of the sea and the sky and the leaves.
Thank you very much. Sarge?
My book is in black and white because color is expensive. That's the only reason. But it's so expensive. CMYK. I mean, like, you talk about three more colors. But seriously, we take color for granted. I just want to say that. No, we take color for granted so much that we wear black as default. And here's a story that's very interesting. I hosted an entire contingent of American students from the University of Iowa. No? And these are poets and writers from the Death Star of writing. So they came to. We took them to Siquijor, right, which is a magical island. It's filled with mystery and myth, no. And one guy came to me afterwards and said, I never saw so many shades of green in my life. And we just took it for granted. It's like green, right? This kind of green. There's no. For us, it's all green. So in other words, we don't have a register for what kind of color it is. No, we understand that it is color, and we speak to us in certain colors. It's darker or it's lighter, but it's green. No, so we see it so close to our face that we don't understand. I'd like to relate it. Go back to my comics. No, I realize now that when we look at things, Filipinos look at things in black and white. It's a bit like reading the comics Tintin, no, or Tantang, where the lead character, Tintin or Tang, is really just two dots and a smile, no? Two dots and you're supposed to fill in your face, right? When you read it. That's why you identify with him, because you put your face there. The same with black and white, no? The same when we see things, no? We put our color there. We put the colors in our mind in whatever we see as black and white. So we do live in that kind of universe where we put the colors wherever we see. In fact, so it means also that colors are almost superfluous to us because we understand that. No, we dream in color. No, when we dream in black and white, it means we're gonna die or something. No, I think. So
Thank you. I just want to add that color also has to do with temperature, like warm, cold, right? And Filipinos are very warm people. And I'm very. One more question? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Just to the previous topic, because I came late, as I just heard a little bit. I also grew up in the Philippines until the age of age, and I know the stories that you were telling. When we saw someone with red hairs, it was the devil. So that's how it was back in the province. You mentioned that the Filipinos have a bright imagination due to these facts, right? I do agree. But the thing is, don't you think that somehow it's also a shame? Because due to that, look at where the Philippines are now. How can we as a nation evolve? How can a Filipino evolve if we keep on going like this? You mentioned most Filipinos are working as what? OFWs, right? So how can we ever evolve? Just look at Taiwan 50 years ago. They were like us, a fisher nation. But where are they now? Right? High tech. What is happening to the Philippines? And how can you contribute that there is a change in the Philippines?
thanks for that, and I acknowledge that. No, where are we now? We're the guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Something that Taiwan has never been. We produce books that we read, that our culture reads. The one thing that we need to know how to do is resist, and continuously resist, and fight back. No, and I think we're learning how to do it. We've gone through 400 years of kind of hell, no? A little kind of hell, and the fact that we're here using this stage as a way to say we have imagination and we're going to push through is not an act of imagination. It's an act of reality. So my response to that is thank you for acknowledging it. And yes, we need to acknowledge that we need to resist and we need to fight. And our presence here is our way of resisting. No, our absence. And also a way of resisting, the the erasure, no, and the victimhood that we like to impose upon ourselves, no, facing a lot of, facing whatever we face in the world. We're here also, and thank you for making your presence known, because we're here also to make our presence known to ourselves, to those OFWs who are here, who are in Europe, in the US, all 10 million of them, who now see us here and who can visit us here by train or by plane and see how proud we are of ourselves, no, and be part of that pride.
May I reference what you said about the Filipinos being domestic helpers, which was brought up by Sarge? I think we are in that, it's a trap that we think that something lowly is undignified. But that is the one thing that we should fight, resist. You can be the best domestic helper and be better than a lousy technical person or inventor. It is the pride that you put into it. It is the dedication to the work that you give. And considering his example, he said that the children now in those households know Filipino mythology. That's part of our culture. So they know culture. Are there other kids who know about Filipino culture, those who were not raised by nannies or domestic help? I don't think so. So they have a way also of spreading our culture. And I think, as I said, we should acknowledge that what they do is not necessarily beneath or inferior, but if you do it well, then you're okay.
Thank you.
I have one more thing. Thanks for bringing up also Taiwan. No, Taiwan, China. China just said. No, I remember that Instagram. Of course, we love Instagram and TikTok. Thank you. No. There was a TikTok where one Chinese policymaker said, 7,000 years we've been doing this. For 7,000 years, and I don't think we can be erased from the earth. We've only been doing this. We've only been independent for what? Since 1946. No, and I'm willing to wait another 1,000 years for us to gain, statehood, nationhood, and selfhood. And this is just the first step. So I'm happy for that. And I'm willing to wait. Just like Jollibee, you're willing to wait for your weird order where you want all dark meat and half hot and spicy. Sorry.
Okay, so we end today's session with warmth. I invite you all to celebrate Philippine thought and Philippine achievement during the Frankfurt Book Fair. So,
Thank you for being here and listening to us. And as a thank you, we're giving away stickers of Philippine mythology creatures out there.
yay.
Give me a little assistant. Go get them, Seraph.
So thank you very much.